drilled and formed into bird housing. So what happened to these? What's the name? Wooden blocks. What's the function is to serve as housing again. As you can see, since all these three things changed, there is substantial transformation. Therefore, even though the country of origin began as Spain, it changed to England. The marking has to be in a place where it's easily seen. It can't be in a place where it can be hidden, or it can be covered, or it can be neglected or just not seen. 4. It has to be in English, except. Exception is when the item comes from an NAFTA country. In that case, it can be in Spanish or French. Number 5, the country of origin marking should be stating the country. For example, Spain. Number 2, items which come from insular possessions of the US do not require a country of origin marking. American Samoa, Wake Island, Midway Islands. The third type of items which do not require a country of origin marking are items which go through a transportation entry. These are pretty much items which come from one country, pass through the US, and then leave the US without actually being part of the US economy. So in these cases, if someone uses a transportation entry to just transfer something from, for example, Canada to Mexico, but it goes through US, it'll go through a transportation entry. Or if there's something that comes in from the sea to the US and then it goes to Mexico or Canada, that's where it stops. It just passes through the US. These are transportation entries. The fourth thing is the J list. The J list is very, very important. This J list is under 134.33. The fifth item on the list are fluids. Fluids, there is no way to label fluids. But because you cannot label fluids itself, you have to label the container. Number 6 on the list is pretty much anything that's going to come into the US, but that's going to be substantially transformed. For example, if you have steel plates which have country of origin as Canada or England and they come to the US, but those plates are going to be drilled and made into something else and the country of origin was shipped, you don't want those plates to say country of origin England or Canada and still show when you transform the plates into something else, because at that time the country of origin will be US. As long as the person receiving the item inside the US knows what the country of origin, that's sufficient. So for example, if those steel plates, they come to the US to manufacture, as long as the manufacturer knows what the country of origin, that's sufficient, because it's going to go through substantial transformation anyway. Number 7 on the list is anything that's more than 20 years old. Number 8 on the list is anything less than $5. Once the importer record does one of these 3 things, they go back to customs. A custom will assign the CF 4647, which will officially release the items. When customs countersigns this, that is official release, and that's what the entry date is. If something is conditionally released, you can't do anything to the items until customs sign that 4647 and officially releases the items. You can't sell it, you can't manipulate it, you can't manufacture it, you can't do anything with it. What if that doesn't happen? What if something comes in and customs doesn't officially release it and 30 days are over or something? What happens then? That's when the penalties kick in. There are 3 types of penalties. 1, a 10% penalty. You will be asked to pay 10% penalty on the customs value of the items. This is something that you cannot choose. You cannot just bring something in, now mark it properly and be like, oh, I'll take the 10% penalty rather than mark something. That's not how it works. The 10% penalty only happens when nothing can be done. So for example, let's say you bring in a bunch of items, there's thousands and thousands of items. Those items coming in, you sell it to someone, they sell it again to someone, then it gets sold to another person, and then it gets put on retail. In retail, there are people that already bought the item and everything. So in that case, customs or you can't really be expected to bring back everything that's out there. There's absolutely no way you can do it. So in that case, customs will penalize you 10% of the value of those items. Number 2 penalty happens if you alter or falsify the country of origin. For example, there's something that's coming from Spain to England and then to US, and country of origin is Spain, but it goes to England, where you change the country of origin labels to England rather than Spain. So when it comes into the US, for some reason it's getting some kind of benefit, or it's not getting as much duty, or there's some kind of financial gain, or whatever the reason is, the fact this happens when the entire item is produced in one country. Number 2 is tariff shift. Tariff shift is another way to find out if something is substantially transformed or not, to change the country of origin. So we'll talk about the tariff shifts when we talk about FTAs, such as NAFTA or Korea-US agreement or some other free trade agreement. Tariff shift is pretty much another way to see if something was substantially transformed enough for the country of origin to change from one country to another. The third item is where the item was knit to shape. Fourth item is where the item was